This right here is a brand new indoor wall mount battery from EG4. And if this battery looks familiar, it's because it's probably the brother of the EG4 Power Pro battery. It's got the same type of form factor, you know, all that kind of stuff. But the main difference between this and the EG4 Power Pro is that the EG4 Power Pro is outdoor rated. So this is the indoor model and it is indoor rated only, okay? But otherwise than that, the specs, like the capacity of the battery, the voltage, all that stuff is generally the same. There are some small differences, right? They both have heaters and stuff like that. They both use the same cells. They're both 48 volts. They both 280 amp hours. But the subtle differences are this has a screen. You know, obviously you don't want to put a screen on an outdoor model, probably, right? There's also the same Amphenol connectors, but the Amphenol connectors for the indoor model are up here, whereas the outdoor model are up here, right? So this battery was probably designed with the 6000 XP in mind because the 6000 XP is outdoor or indoor rated, right? And they have a conduit box here that fits perfectly with the 6000 XP. And the Power Pro was probably designed with the 18K in mind because the 18K is outdoor rated, the Power Pro is outdoor rated. They have a conduit box that fits perfectly for that combination, right? So don't get me wrong, you can use this battery with pretty much any inverter. You can use it with the EG4 3K, you can use it with the Victron inverter, you can use it with any kind of MPPT power charge controller and stuff like that. But the best pairing and the system that is designed for in mind is probably the 6000 XP, okay? So with that combination, since they're both indoor rated, have all the components and stuff like that, you're probably gonna get the best design, not necessarily performance, but you know, the best benefits from that. So if you wanna know more about this battery, stick with us. So this right here is the right side of the inverter, or technically the left side of the inverter, but if you're facing the inverter, this is the right side of the inverter, okay? So the right side has this circuit breaker, right? And this is an IP67 rated case, and the way they get this case, or this enclosure, is that they got this lip here that kind of has this gasket in here, right? So technically this thing is it's IP67 rated, but this entire battery is not, okay? So don't confuse that, all right? So this breaker kind of activates the current that with the cells that's in this battery to be connected to this, right, to this bus bar. So don't get that confused with doing anything else. That's pretty much all it does. And in this case, with this nadir breaker down, right, means it's off even though it's green. Red, if you flip it up, it means it's on and current is going to be active, as it says right here, okay? So don't get the color schemes confused, because some people will think green is good, right, and red is bad. But in this case, think of it as green and you're good to work on it, and red, you're dead, right? So think of it that way. So this is the power switch that actually turns the entire battery on, like the screen and stuff like that. So if you do need to use that, it's a push button type switch. Here is a handle if you wanted to lift it up this way. They also have another handle, vertical handle down here in case, and there's another one on the other side in case you needed two people to kind of lift it that way, okay? And this obviously has a rope on the top and the bottom to help you move it. I've kind of temporarily installed it this way, and I know, guaranteed, the internet's gonna flame me for this or whatever, but you know, I got hardy board here, OSB here, and technically under all of this is OSB, right? But the way I was originally trying to put it was put the battery on here, right, the hardy board, but there's a little bump out down here, and then there's a bump out on the battery which won't let me put it flush here. And technically I could wall mount the entire battery onto here as it's designed to do, but this battery weighs a whopping 282 pounds, and I didn't feel like I needed another 282 pounds on this wall, even if it's just temporary. So I technically put it on the wall mount brace here. I didn't screw it permanently in because I mounted it too low, and I kind of did that on purpose, mainly because I wanted to be able to take it off a lot easier. But the main reason, even though this battery is heavy, we have kids running around and stuff, so I didn't want to accidentally tip over or move or whatnot. So it's literally just in there with the French cleat type system, so it doesn't like prevent it from falling over or moving around, okay? So that's why it's there like this. You're just gonna have to work with it. It's just gonna be here temporarily, all right? So if you want to move around to the left side of the battery, there's pretty much nothing on this left side of the battery, right? You got this here, the handle here, and this is like, you know, horizontal handle. This is the vertical handle. It's got feet here if you look at it. The feet are removable and they do turn out a little bit. If you wanted to, I guess you could put casters on them, but you probably don't want to put casters on a battery this big or this heavy, mainly because you don't want it to move around after you installed it, especially with all that current and wire and stuff going through it. But you can pretty much twist the feet off completely and just hang there, all right? Moving around to the top here, there are 4 infinite connectors here on the negative side, 4 infinite connectors here on the positive side. And if you don't know what the infinite connectors are they're pretty much like there's a contact plug inside here, and you press the plug into there and it really connects, okay? So all 4 of these are wired in parallel, and all 4 of these are wired in parallel. The reason for that is mainly because you can parallel other batteries to this, right? And you can also connect the inverter to here, right? So there's a bus bar inside of here. They're all connected together, and the bus bar is rated for up to 600 amps, okay? So you're not gonna have a limitation there with trying to use this batteries with like 2 6000 XPs or anything like that, because it is rated for that, okay? And when you're not using it, you wanna make sure you put these covers on here, which it comes with, mainly because you don't want debris getting in there, right? Between the connector and giving it a difficult time, right? So other than that, you got the dip switch on here. You got to change around depending on, you know, whatever communication system or inverter you're using it with. It's got a little pinhole here for a reset in case you needed to reset it. CAN RJ45 port, a RS480 or CAN bus RJ45 port, an RS485 RJ45 port, and also battery comms, right? So depending on your configuration, you're gonna have to mess with this and, you know, connect the battery comms or parallel kits or whatever you got, but, you know, it's all gonna depend on your configuration. The point is, all of that is on top of the battery here. Now, speaking of the top of the battery here, let's talk about the other stuff here, which is the ground conductor or connector here in case you needed to ground this, and in some cases you probably will. And all of these screws, as you see on the top here, are reset or countersunk into this plate, except for 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And these 4 are designed to be used with the conduit box that sits on top of here. So you can buy this battery as a battery only, or you can buy it as a kit with, you know, all kinds of other kits. And I'm sure people are going to be selling different combo kits or whatnot. But the most popular kit you're probably going to see is probably going to be this battery, the conduit box that sits on top of here, and then the 6000 XP. And those 3 things as a kit, mainly because as you mentioned earlier, this is an indoor rated battery and the 6000 XP is indoor rated. So that being a great combination, they built a conduit box for that sits in between this and the inverter, which we can show you there, right? So you would attach that conduit box onto the top of this battery using those 4 screws, and, you know, you get the really best of you know, all worlds, because you kind of get that hybrid all-in-one type inverter with the conduit box here. So taking a closer look at the screen, they did a pretty good job on the screen, and unless you're in the settings mode or going into settings mode, you're not really going to be able to touch much, right, as I just saw there, right? So it's got right now standby mode, and it's got what communication protocol the battery is set to right now, and you can change these, but in case you're troubleshooting, it is really nice to look at the screen and kind of figure out what the protocols are set to. It's got voltage right here, the ampere capacity, and also the currently the amps flowing through the battery. Right now it should be 0 because I didn't flip the breaker, right? It's also got a date and time. I didn't set this, it's just out of the box like this, but it's close, but it's not right, and we'll have to find a way to change that later. Okay, so going into settings mode, right, you can change the protocol that you're going to be using, but in order to change it, you got to put the password in. The default password is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Checkbox, right, which is putting it in, and then the white color box is pretty much what you've selected. All these yellow boxes are pretty much what you can select. So because I'm going to be using mine with the 6000 XP, I'm going to be leaving it as EG4 Lux, right? You can change also the 485 stuff, right? But you can also change the language in case you wanted to use Spanish, so you really have a choice between English and Spanish. You got version of firmware of this battery, and also the LCD, like BMS and stuff, right? So if you are upgrading versions, that's probably going to be useful to look at. You can also look at the voltage of each cell, right? And this is all in millivolts. So mine, they're all pretty close balance, right? They're close to about 3300 millivolts. So that's good to look at. You know, people aren't going to be looking at it all the time, but if you go look at the temperature, it's got 4 temperature sensors in here across the battery packs, which can kind of tell you, you know, mine right now is closely sitting at 22, but the PCB temperature is also here, which is 21 degrees, and this is all in Celsius, and I didn't find a way to set it to Fahrenheit because, you know, the people in America like to use Fahrenheit. So these are the Infinite connectors that the Indoor Wall Mount Power Pro battery or budget model or light model comes with. And it looks pretty much exactly like this. You can press this on, you can hold this and pull it up to disconnect it. But it does come with this 2-aught cable rated for 600 volts up to 200 degrees, right? So one end is Infinite connected, the other end is, you know, pretty much pre-stripped. So if you are going to use this, make sure you know that, mainly because you will need to buy other connectors to put on here depending on whatever you needed it for, right? So if we're going to parallel a bunch, you can either make these, right, into parallel cables, right? Or you could put, you know, pretty much lugs on them so that you can pretty much use them for whatever you need to do. But it does come with 4 cables like this, right? I only have 2 here, but it does come with 4 of these, like 2 of each, like 2 reds and 2 blacks. So make sure you get lugs if you're going to get these. All right, so for the load test, we kind of got a mad scientist configuration going on up in here, and I do not recommend you do this. You probably should not do this for many number of reasons, okay? But first, we have this EG4 Indoor battery, which is connected to this 6000 XP, which is then powering this charge inverter, which is then charging another EG4 Indoor wall mount battery, okay? So let's go ahead and see how this stuff is pretty much working, all right? We got the 6000 XP putting out roughly, it's at 91% of its load capacity, as you can see right here. 91% of its load capacity is pushing this charge inverter. Let's go back out here, 55 volts, 92.8 amps, right? But the indoor battery that is powering the charge inverter, or the 6000 XP, is pushing 119.7 amps. And then the battery that is being charged by this charge inverter is taking an input of 93 amps. It's been hovering between 92 point something and 93 amps, 92.9, right? Going back here, 92.8, 92.7. So it hovers around there. Let's just call it a rounding error, but they're pretty much exactly the same, right? 92.8 here, 92.9 here, all right? So could be a small charging issue or a rounding issue or whatnot, but that's pretty much what's happening. Like I said, I don't recommend you do this for many number of reasons, you know, primarily besides charging efficiency. And before the internet goes off and says, yes, that's dangerous. Yeah, that is pretty much dangerous, but if you're gonna say that's just electrical tape, it's not exactly electrical tape. That's what we call this 3M Temflex, what do you call it, splicing tape. And as you can see here, this is a thick rubber. This is a self-adhering tape. This is not a video about the tape, but you know, we're just doing this for temporary purposes for the test, okay? So it's not just electrical tape, okay? So just make sure you keep that in mind. Right now, 91% of its capacity, and we're letting it run. We'll just let it run for a bit and come back to see if there's any issues. We don't want to charge it up all the way. Like I said, this is just mainly for the load test, but we'll come back in a bit and see what's happening. So that's what you get with this EG4 Indoor wall mount battery. And just in case you missed it, let's nerd out on some of the specs here, okay? So this right here is an indoor wall mount battery, which is rated at 280 amp hours, which is about a 14.3 kilowatt hour battery, okay? It's got a 10-year warranty on it, right? Which that means is if you buy and register within about 1 year after buying it, EG4 will warranty it for about 10 years of you using it at 80% depth of discharge. If you don't know what that means, it pretty much means if you have 100% and you discharge it to let's just say 20%, you can charge it back up, right? That's 80% depth of discharge. And you could do that for about 8,000 times, right? And then if any fails at any time within there, they'll warranty it, right? Which is pretty good, right? Because 10-year warranty is pretty good. But the other thing to point out here is that according to the specs and everything on their website and marketing, it says it's designed for a 15-year lifespan, which equates to somewhere around like 82.6 megawatt hours of production. So if you account for 15 years of this battery at, let's say, $3,400, it actually comes out to be pretty good. Your return on investment should be pretty good on that. You should you know, be way ahead of your investment on that at that point, right? So it's going to be something that's pretty good to work with and have, mainly because they've designed it to work for a long time. Yes, this battery is new. A lot of people are going to say it hasn't been time tested yet, but a lot of people will argue it's pretty much the same thing as the Power Pro. Yes, that thing hasn't been out for a ton of time, but it's been out long enough. People have been using it a lot and have had no issues, okay? And this is pretty much almost the same thing, okay? So with that being said, you should feel pretty safe there, all right? So the other few things to point out on here is the fire arresters that are in here. Yes, we didn't do a tear down, but the specs say that there's 2 fire arresters in here, and other people who have torn it down have shown their fire arresters in here. So just going over that, you know, you probably don't need that because it's a lithium phosphate battery, LiPo4 battery, but you know, they kind of need it for code compliance and some of the certifications they're going after, which we're going to talk about actually right now, mainly because this battery technically has a UL1973 certification. You go on their website, you can download the certification of that. They're currently testing it for UL9540A, I believe, certification, and they think they're going to achieve that, at least according to the website. That's what it seems like they're going to get, okay? So you're not going to have too many problems. If you look on the manual, it will say don't mount it on anything that's combustible. Yes, this is on wood, but like I said, that's a temporary thing we have going on up in there, and I don't plan for it to be there the whole time, right? So let's talk a little bit about the value of it, because that's probably going to be one of the most important deciding factors for most people buying this battery, right? If they're thinking about it, right? So this battery technically is, I don't know if it's made by EG4, but it's EG4 branded, okay? The only reason I'm saying that is because EG4, or the Power Pro batteries were mainly EG4, right? But now you see them kind of rebranded, you know, in several different areas. It's the exact same battery. If you look at it, people have torn them down. They're pretty much saying they're the same thing. So I don't know if EG4 is manufacturing this, but they've at least got their brand on this battery, all right? So this EG4 Indoor wall-mount battery currently costs about $3,400, and that's a sale at the time of the introduction of this. I don't know if they're going to have additional sales and whatnot, but we purchased this battery from Signature Solar for roughly about $3,400 with free shipping because it qualifies over that $2,000 mark, okay? So with that being said, a lot of people are going to say, well, 14.3 kilowatt hours is a really odd number because server rack batteries are like 5.12 kilowatt hours, let's say, right? So if you say 3 server rack batteries, which is, let's just, we're just gonna rough out the numbers and say, let's say a little bit about 15.3, right? 15.4 kilowatt hours is more capacity than this, which is 14.3. And yes, you would be correct, right? So you can't get an exact apples to apples number on that, right? But let's just say you get 2 indoor wall mount batteries, which is close to, right, 28 kilowatt hours, correct? Because we're talking about 14.2 times 2, right? So 28 kilowatt hours. But if you get 6 server rack batteries, let's say that's close to about 30 kilowatt hours of usage, right? So this will have 2 kilowatt hours less. And if you're trying to figure out what that really means, that's like 2 Delta 2s, right? Or 1 Delta EcoFlow Delta 2 and an extra battery, right? So that's pretty much what that means to get as close to apples and apples comparison. So 2 of these will run you about $7,000. 6 of the server rack batteries at this current point in time, which they're having a spring Black Friday sale, is about $1,100 each. So that's $6,600, right? But most people getting those server rack batteries will maybe want to buy the server rack case or enclosure, right? Or the rack, right? And that's roughly about $550-ish, okay? So if you include the count of 6,600 plus the 500, let's just say that's 7,000. So close, they're roughly coming out to be the same. I do want to also point out the Life Power 4 batteries technically are usually around $1,300-$1,400, right? And they're only currently on sale. Once in a while, will go on sale for about $1,100, right? So it's not always going to be that price. Also, if you've been following the channel, we've also bought a lot of AO lithium batteries for $1,000 shipped, right? Including cables and all that stuff. So 6 of those will still be $600. But at that point, you still have to buy the rack. You probably don't want to buy the AO lithium rack, right? But you want to buy some type of rack and, you know, connect all the cables up in series or parallel and all that kind of stuff, right? And make that happen. But like I said, the point is, if you account for all the costs, the total setup cost and all that, it's going to come out to be the same. Yes, the server rack batteries will have a little bit more in terms of capacity, but you're also going to have more failure points or connections, right? Because each battery will have to have a connection, right? So let's just say each battery you put 2 connections, 3 if you're doing communications, right? So 3 times 6, that's 18 connections you're gonna have to tie in right there. But with 2 of these in parallel, you got 2 connections, or 3 if you're using communications, right? So that's probably the biggest differentiating factor between that and this, besides, you know, the 2 kilowatt hours of capacity. Also, the other main difference is going to be the form factor. So these are wall mountable, right? So you can kind of put these right next to each other. Technically, I think in the manual it says you want them 7 inches apart minimum, right? And the cables they include for paralleling kits, if you buy the paralleling kit, you know, are long enough to do that. We're going to find out here soon, but they say they're long enough to do that. So that's what really happens, right? So the biggest difference, form factor, bigger space, heavy, wall mount. These are going to be more flat. So if you're in the garage, you want to put them up against the wall so you can still pull the cars in and stuff like that. That may be something that works for you, depending on the size of your garage. It may not, right? So like I said, without getting too much jibber jabbering, that's the biggest things that you're going to have to worry about if you're going to thinking about buying this or not. We purchased these right now, and it seemed like to be a really good deal. The one thing I will say is a huge downside to these is because they are so big and all the capacity is in one big battery, instead of moving, right, let's say 3 server rack batteries versus one big like battery, you know, you're going to have to choose, right? But my point is, you're not going to move them all the time. You're going to move them rarely ever, right? Once you install them, most likely they're going to stay there. So, you know, that's not a big deal for me. Maybe a big deal for you, but something to think about. So, like I said, hope this video helped you guys out. If you have any questions, let us know. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll see you guys next time.